Hello, U.S. History 101 class. Welcome to week 9. And I just want to say I enjoyed grading your discussions, mainly in the sense that I see that a lot of you had some sort of actual, real, genuine opinion about the legacy of Andrew Jackson, and looked at the things that were covered in the textbook, the Zen book, and with the documentary and a documentary that was presenting a very nuanced but very clear-cut set of historical details on this very complicated legacy. And I enjoy seeing you get engaged with the material. Now, this week, instead of talking about the legacy of a particular ruling person, I'm introducing the idea of discussing more about economic tensions and conflicts, and also immigration. Now, I point out in the discussion, to just remind you, some of you are going to say, well, this seems like a very cherry-picked set of documentaries on immigration. Obviously, more than just Irish, Germans, and Scandinavians immigrate to the United States. But basically, I wanted to give you an overview of kind of the topic, and I wanted to remind you that I was also, this time period that we're addressing, immigration was still limited in terms of who was coming, and we're not seeing the United States being a multicultural society in the way in which we have now. So one branch of my family was rooted in Turlock in terms of also immigration. My great-grandparents, or should I say my great-great-grandparents, came from the southern part of Sweden in a very small rural area, and moved to Turlock. And Turlock was dominated by Swedish immigration. But we also are going to later see Portuguese from the Azores Islands, and Assyrians, mainly coming from the Urmia area of Iran. And then of course we have, many immigrating from Mexico and further south of the border. So, and of course I didn't even mention many other ethnic groups, right? But again, this wasn't me having my own narrow set of opinions about who's more important to talk about than the others. It's mainly the time period. I'm focusing on immigration, but from the time period of what we're covering, and the issues of immigrations at that specific time. And so what I also want to remind everyone is this is actually a really good way to reflect on how in the United States, that as each new wave of immigrants has been coming in, that the population existing here has consistently had a very resistant attitude towards newer immigrants, and then somehow eventually over time the group that was looked down upon ends up getting integrated in to our society, and this whole cycle starts again. And in retrospect, right now, there's some other groups that I would have liked to have addressed more, like the Italian community. As I'm teaching every year, I'm trying to think about or expand or add to each lesson. And so sometimes after I go, I teach for, or actually I put out my classes, I think back of some added details I would have liked to put in there. So then the other part of this is that I'm just limited on time. So this is just to give you an overview of some of the issues. But now, so again, let's look at this, what we're seeing here. Many conservative kind of almost well, they're very openly want to control immigration here in the United States now, are actually Catholic. But it's interesting, right, that you're seeing that to be Catholic in much of American history, or the history of the United States, as a government, there was tremendous hostility towards anyone, even white Europeans, from being Catholic. Catholic was seen as something over the top to be worried about. And the main thing I could compare it to is the way that some people feel about Islam now. Islamophobia is Catholic phobia. And it's just not now. It just seems to be such. Most people don't care about whether you're Catholic or Protestant Christian, but that was a huge deal in the religious wars in Europe, and those religious wars were being brought into the United States. So, if we look at how I covered, Andrew Jackson came from Protestant Irish people, originally of Scottish background, and the Protestant settler colonization of Ireland was to look at Irish Catholics in the same way that Native Americans were viewed here. And so then, as you see, as we look over this immigration history, this view of Irish Catholics, and I need to add, Italians will also face this. And part of it was that they saw that the Pope was this kind of puppet master that required that all of the Catholics would have to be extremely loyal just to the Pope and not their country, so they could never be truly citizens that are loyal to the United States. This was the way it was pitched at the time. The Ku Klux Klan, which we haven't even got to the U.S. Civil War yet, for a long time mainly was anti-Catholic also. And so it's, and then when we get to Kennedy, which we're never going to cover in this class, the big deal was him being the first non-Protestant, the first Catholic president to get elected in the United States. And I believe that Joe Biden is, but it's not even like a topic, right? Like everybody's like, well, okay, so Joe Biden's Catholic, so what? Like, okay. But so then we have to go back and look and say, okay, think about how people make a big deal about, okay, Islam, people coming south of the border, all these tensions that are coming from the anti-immigration segments of our society now. Many of the people who are a part of that are a part of a group that maybe at one time was the feared immigrant community, right? And I think that's something that all political persuasions should kind of sit on and think about for a moment. So I'm hopefully that will be a helpful way for you to maybe have a more balanced view, or to just, when you look at immigration and the current debates that happen now, I find that these time periods, as we go back and we explore how this topic was brought up in these different time periods in U.S. history, it's going to be very helpful and informative for us to delve into. Now, the Howard Zen book also talks about class conflict, issues that were taking place within American society as well. These are all big topics, important topics, and unfortunately, I guess you could say, timeless topics. Not going away anytime soon now, and seem to be a theme that's brought into here. This class. So, but I just want to remind anyone that if I've left out something, if somebody's uncomfortable with anything that was brought up, this is your time to be able to throw your questions out or your challenges to any of the narratives going on in regards to any of the topics that we're covering. So I want this class for you to really feel like that you are in a space to grow, learn, be challenged yourself, but you can also challenge me. challenge the material that's covered. You can do that in some of the discussions as long as it's respectful, right? Or you can hit me up and do that as well. So, anyhow, I hope you all have a great week, and we'll be in touch.